Okay, we're live.
Welcome to the Tom Bigby Tales. I'm Shannon Evans, your host, and I'm here today with Jake Phillips of the Cultured Bumpkin. And I'm really honored and excited to have him here on the show. Jake, welcome. What are you up
Thank you.
to, man?
I appreciate that. Well, I'm always up to something or other. Love your podcast. Of course, I guess no one's been a listener very long. You've only been on the air 4 or 5 months, but I love your podcast. So
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
really happy to be here today.
Thank you. So, how long have you been doing this? When were you
Well,
at the Cultured Bumpkin?
Cultured Bumpkin, I started in December of 2018. This was my first
Wow.
episode. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe November, but it was winter or close to winter of 2018.
And have you consistently, like weekly, or did you have a pattern, or were you just testing the waters when you first started this?
When I first started, I sort of tested the waters. So my goal for the Culture Bumpkin was to sort of make little known writing, good writing, accessible. So, I couldn't find, let's say, a lot of Mark Twain short stories, who I really like, Mark Twain. So I was like, well, I'll just read them. I'll read them and post them for
Mhm.
people that are like me. So that's kind of how it started. Um, and I do more mainstream stuff, public domain, but
Uh-huh.
more, I'll do poetry and stuff, or, something that people would definitely have heard of. But I kind of started doing like Journalism in Tennessee by Mark Twain, which is kind of,
Yeah.
not many people have heard of that one, but that's a real funny one. Um,
Have you done any of Roughing It?
no, I have not.
Oh my gosh. I still think that's some of his funniest writing, especially when he ended up in Utah. And he was like, they blindfolded him to go up to the silver mines. And he was talking about the women who were, they were widowed. And these miners had taken on these widows because they, back at that point, Utah still allowed plural marriages. And so he's writing about the fact that they blindfolded him to take him up to these silver mines because they didn't want him to know where they were. So he's like, okay, fine, blindfolded. He gets up there, and all the miners have come in out of the mines, and they're sitting at these long trestle tables, and the women are all bustling around. And he looks around and he goes, you know, that was some of the homeliest women he'd ever seen in his life. And he said, these fellows had really done mankind the kindest gesture by taking those women off the hands of the rest of humanity, and taking on these women and marrying them. Anyways, he does it in his typical tongue in cheek,
Right.
Mark Twain style.
I have not done that one, or any parts of it. And
Well, the parts about when he writes about riding with the Pony Express is hilarious because he talks about how sore he is because he's not been
right.
of course, the Pony Express riders were like, what, 14, 15, 16-year-old. I mean, they were young kids. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I think you might enjoy those.
I need to check those out, because he was such a prolific writer.
Yeah.
It would take a long time. I mean, you could do a podcast just of his work, but I think, in answer to the question, a long way around the cowshed there, but I shoot for once a week now.
Hmm.
So for a long time, it was kind of like, I'll do 3 or 4, and then I peter out for a month or 2 or 6, and then yeah, I'm in 2024. I definitely want once a week in something. So,
Well, I know your story, but tell my listeners how you got started.
okay, well, let's see. I started in voice acting because, for those that don't know, I'm a voice actor by trade. Like, I'm not a full-time podcaster. I make my living by being a voice actor. I do commercials and audiobooks and things like that, but I do podcasting because I enjoy it, and YouTube as well. So, um, I guess uh, my first my first 2008, I was in the Army, and the
Hmm.
guy and my platoon sergeant, I had a very thick Southern accent at the time, and I thought,
No,
I
really?
no, I the the I just thought you were just born. I didn't know you could change the way that you talked. Yeah, I knew that some actors did it, but I wasn't an actor, so you couldn't change. And just born this way. And my platoon sergeant, we were about to go to Iraq, and he was like, "You got to learn to talk because we can't hear you. We can't understand you. And if you're doing that on the radio, we're all going to get killed. You got to learn to talk, man." And so I thought, man. So I started trying to enunciate better, and it worked. I started to. I get asked a lot, where am I from in Mississippi, and so fast forward a few years, that helped me sort of lose the Southern accent when I needed to do more mid-regional type of stuff. But I started recording after my dad died, 2013, because my daughter was born around the same time, and I wanted some recordings of myself for her. So
Mhm.
that's kind of why I started my YouTube. It's kind of a dumping ground at first. I would just put stuff up, and then later on, I started a podcast. But kind of the same reason, but I wanted to pass along a love of good literature to my daughter, so like my dad did to me, and he didn't record it; he just read it live. But I wanted, that YouTube wasn't around when he was passing that along to me, so I thought that's what I'll do.
Interesting. So I've heard a couple of things that you've actually co-recorded with your children.
Right?
I don't know if you put anything of that. I mean, we're friends, so I see it amongst your Facebook. I don't know if you've published any of that elsewhere, like on YouTube or anything, because the cartoons one, the most
Right.
recent one you did with your daughter is just righteously hilarious. And her intonation and everything is she's spot on brilliant.
I
Um,
appreciate that. Yeah.
what has been some of your favorite co-recordings with your kids?
So for those that to clarify what Shannon was saying, for those that don't know, my daughter and I like to take Disney scenes and then dub over them, right? So
Yeah.
I'll be from the Aristocats. I'm the little Basset Hound that Jim Lindsay voiced.
Mhm.
Hey Napoleon, that guy. And then my daughter was the bigger guy that Pat the dog that Pat Buttram, that
Mhm.
that fella that talked through his nose, "I'm the leader, I'll say when it was," that guy.
Yeah.
So we, uh, we like to do those. I think one of my favorites was from, what was the movie? It's more new. It has, Hugh Jackman and Zach Galifianakis. It was about like a Bigfoot, but that's not the name of it. Anyway, one of the reasons for it, because Hugh Jackman and I played him, his character, and we're
Yeah.
just dubbing over,
Yeah, yeah.
um, she was the Bigfoot played by Zach Galifianakis, and she was hilarious. And then I was the explorer that found her. But one of the reasons why, in addition to it, just it's fun to do that with her, and she's so fun. I posted on Instagram or something, and a person that was on that team, like the creative team, was like, this I was on the team that put this together. She was in the graphics or something, and she said, this is wonderful. I love this. I love,
Oh,
that,
that's
y'all connect.
awesome. That
So
is
I suppose
wonderful.
that's my favorite.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
Right here on the Tombigbee River in Columbus, Mississippi.
that's right.
We're talking to famous people and we're doing famous things. Um, I know you really focus on the classics and certain classic short stories and things that are in the public domain. Why not sci-fi or Zane Grey westerns? Uh, why did you pick the classics?
Well, I like the classics, and they're well written. If it's, there's been non well written classics, but generally the reason why they're classic is because they were written really well, and there's no copyrights on it anymore.
Mhm,
So I some things, like, let's say, Tolkien, all of his stuff has been copyrighted by
mhm,
the Tolkien estate. So if I mean, I could probably do it now, but let's say if something if I recorded an audiobook on my own, sort of a pirated version, and posted it, they could say, "Hey, you have to take that down." And
Yeah.
I don't wanna risk that. So I do non-public domain, but only if I have, or mostly if I have permission from the author
Uh-huh.
or the publisher. Unless it's something like, I do things from maybe the 30s or 40s from time to time. I'm like, James Thurber, maybe I'll
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
see how this goes.
Walter Mitty.
Exactly.
Well, when you do Jules Verne, let me know, okay?
Okay, okay.
'Cause I was a Jules Verne junkie as a kid. That was
Okay, I love Jules Verne. Like
I do
20,000
too.
Leagues Under the Sea was a early kind of an early book that I read that was like, "This is so good."
Yeah, Journey to the Center of the Earth was also great. So
Right,
and it's kind of written it's not short stories, but the way it's in the collection,
right,
it's kinda like reading Gulliver's Travels where that's, in sections. Anyways,
right.
so
Yeah,
cool. I look forward to that. Um, what you said you do voiceovers professionally
right.
and you do books. You do audiobooks. What
Mhm.
type of audiobooks do you have a specific genre or
Not really. So usually I'll work with, publishers or authors, and a lot of them are earlier stuff that I don't like. I feel like I'm better now, and so I don't like some of my earlier stuff. But I've done history. I've done a romance or two. I've done a sci-fi or two. I've done a fantasy or two. It's just I have a wide range of stuff that I enjoy doing.
can you say some of the things or is it like you're not allowed to say that you're the voice on those?
No, there's nothing that I'm not allowed to, but I would probably a lot of them have been so long, and there's nothing big, nothing like, "Oh, you're in, whatever series."
Yeah,
This
Joy
would
Luck Club or whatever. Yeah.
right. I would have to look, um, I would have to kinda go look and say, "Okay, okay, here's what it is."
Uh-huh.
But yeah, put me on the spot on that
So
one.
how did you get started in voiceovers and especially in audiobooks? That fascinates me. I had a friend who did that in Seattle, and,
Yeah.
she just fascinated me in how she'd get approached.
Well, you can do it a lot of different ways, and I have done it all from, and this is something anybody could do. If you can create good sound, have a good sound setup, a decent mic, you can go to acx.com, and it's owned by Audible or Amazon, I guess. And it basically puts narrators, producers, authors all in the same message board, and you can audition for stuff on acx.com. Anybody that thinks that sounds interesting ought to check it out. So I've done stuff from there. I've also emailed people like, "Hey, here's this book that hasn't been I noticed on Amazon it hasn't been an audiobook. I would love to do that because I'm an audiobook narrator." And they'll say, "Oh, okay, well we can work something out." Also on social media, I posted some stuff on social media, and I've had authors reach out and say, "Hey, I liked your stuff on TikTok, or do you do this professionally?" And then I can work with them like that. So I have a multi-pronged approach to getting work.
Interesting. So are you unionized? Like
I'm not,
actors?
no. So what I do, and I don't think audiobooks were under the strike, anyway. I want to say, and reason I say I'm not sure is because I'm not union, but I want to say that the like audiobooks were not under that Screen Actors strike, type of a thing. Even though there were some AI issues that they were sort of, bones of contention that heavily affect narrators. I don't think that was part of it.
Wow, that's really interesting. Um, you've done some voiceovers, like advertisements
Right.
or advertisements, as some people call them.
Advertisements, right, over across the pond. Yeah. The,
What are some of your ones that you're most proud of, and what are some of the ones that have been most interesting?
well, a lot of the ones that are the most, I don't know, it just depends. A lot of the time it's what is on the screen. Because as a voice actor, um, a lot of the time, especially if you're an if okay, so if it's a A-list actor, okay, we're gonna hire James Earl Jones to narrate this. Obviously, it's recognizable, but you want people to know this is James Earl Jones. We got to do
Yeah.
this. If you're an unknown like myself, your voice is to set the stage. It's not, oh, who is that voice actor? It ought to thrill and exhilarate you, but you don't know why. And it turns out it's that a voice actor is doing a great job, but it's like you don't want to be the spotlight. You're enhancing all the stuff on the screen, basically. So there was a lot of short film type things that I really like. I was in I was Errol Flynn in a movie that premiered at the Cannes Film Festival
Uh-huh.
last year. So that was cool. Um, there is a British snack food called a turkey Twizzler, and I did an advertisement for them, which was fun. That aired in it was kind of in the news and the Daily Mail and stuff, and it was all over the newspapers over there. Back when they sort of it came back because it had been banned by Jamie Oliver or he helped ban it for a long time. Anyway, um, there's an Italian piano maker that I really like that one because it's like shot like a short film,
Mhm.
but it's a handcrafted type of a thing. I really like that one. I don't know. I've done thousands, so it'd be hard to narrow it down.
Really?
Yeah,
Thousands?
yeah. I mean, I this is what I do full time, so
So how
I've
long
done,
does it take you to record, like, a 30-second spot? I mean, I know it takes more than 30 seconds.
it
So
depends
what
on
is
what it is. So if it's somebody that I've worked with many times before, I already know the tone, the projection, because some people they want it like we want it to be intimate and heartfelt, and so you're going to want to be more. Your voice is going to be down low, and it feels more close and like I'm confiding in you. Whereas if you're doing a fireworks stand, which right now at New Year's I have, there's these, it's called Jake's Fireworks, funnily enough. And they're all over the United States where it's
Uh-huh.
like, I'm going to turn down my mic way down and be like, Jake's Fireworks, get to me, and it's like it's totally different. Um, so it depends if I've worked with them before. So if
So
it's a
now how
first,
do you find those gigs?
I mean, I'm on all kind of stuff. I have a website. I have my, um, what do you call it? My demos and my reels on, different sites. I have it on YouTube. I'll post. I try not to wear out people that follow me on, let's say, Facebook friends.
Uh-huh.
But from time to time, I'll say, hey, I just made this new reel of stuff I've been in the last year or so. So, if you know anybody, and I always get business from that. People are always reposting and they'll say, hey, my friend's a creative director at this company. And I'll get a
Oh, wow.
message from them like, hey, I'll keep you on our roster. And so I'm kind of mercenary with how I do it. But, I mean, I think anybody could do it. I'm not a special snowflake or anything. Anybody that put forth the effort that I have could do it.
Wow. Now have you I mean, I know you said you had to learn how to speak right for the military.
Yeah.
What voice training have you done?
Voice training with a voiceover coach. I've never had any voiceover coach training. I've had screen actor coaching, like that type of coaching, and then stage acting, and
Mhm.
then I do a lot of stuff with more acting coaches in general. But and I apply it to voice acting. But I've never gone to a voice actor coach per se. But you can also learn tons of stuff. I've learned tons of stuff from YouTube. Just
So
like,
why? In a lot of ways.
y- I mean, well, I mean, there's so many master
Yeah.
class. You can listen to Sareed McKellen or Michael Caine talk at length about,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I've learned about podcasting. I mean,
right.
that was kinda I was like, between just talking to you over a I don't know, I think I was having a soda water or something, and,
Yeah.
we were down at Munson's, and I was like, "Okay, how does this work, and how does this work?"
Right. Right. And
And
that's
then
that's the
going
best
to
way to do it.
YouTube, and you'd give me a nugget, and I'd go off, and here we are a handful of downloads later, and we're all coasting along.
Right.
So, if somebody wanted you to, to see your reel who was looking for a voiceover actor, is it the same location as your, narration?
Yes, I on my website, jakephillips.us, is I've got a commercial and a narration demo, and
Mhm,
then I need to put audiobook and character. There's some other ones I need to put on there, but those are the 2 that people can listen to, or if you're just curious, like, what does a
mhm.
commercial sound like? And then I've got my contact info on those types of places as well.
Well, I'm really surprised about, like, how many people in the, um, publishing sector follow my podcast, which is
Right,
kinda surprising because it's small town stuff, so to speak.
right.
Um, I mean, it'd be kinda cool if you said, "Hey, after being on your podcast, so and so reached out to me." That would be kinda cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
I hope that happens because, I only want the best for my friends here.
Well, I appreciate that.
So, I'm gonna put my glasses on because I gotta read my questions, but, because I gotta be the nerd. Um, what's your favorite? I think I've heard one of the ones you did, like, was it Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, yeah, Sunday Night Football, I like that one. That was a
That
fun
was
one.
amazing. I was like, "I heard that. Oh my
Yeah,
god, I know that guy."
that was a fun one. Um,
How
yeah,
long ago was that one?
that was, September 2019
Oh,
was
wow.
that one, and because they Sunday Night Football does it every week as a different regional sort of,
Mhm.
narrator, sometimes celebrity, sometimes not. I like how they do it. It's not always a celebrity,
I
and they
like that
make it
it's not the same person all the time, so
right. Mhm.
you don't get tired of it.
Right, and it always adds like a regional feel to it, which is what they're looking for. And this was between the Cowboys and the Saints, so they're definitely going to go Southern
Eh,
on that one.
yeah.
And
So let's bring this back to the Tom Bigby because, everything's about me. I
right,
mean, about my podcast. I mean, whoops, okay, that was self-serving, but, seriously, we're both from live in this area. You live on one side of the river, I live
right.
on the other. We're in the same county.
And I was born on your side in the hospital over there, so
Really? At GTR?
right.
Uh, so, what what keeps you here or what drew you back? Or all or both?
Yeah, well, great question. I'm from a large family, and my dad had cancer, passed away in 2013. So I was in the army, and then I was up in Tennessee working with my in-laws. My father-in-law has an HVAC business up there. I was working for him, and but when my dad died, I think my youngest brother was 6 at the time.
Oh, wow.
Like, I mean, biological, like real
Yeah,
full
yeah.
brother.
Just your baby brother.
Baby brother, and then, yeah, and so I felt the need to move back, and he's actually graduating next year, so I don't know, maybe things will change, like, maybe I'll move, I don't know, but I think that that's what brought us back is kinda like to try and be a father figure for a dad that left too soon, and,
Mhm.
that's kinda what brought us back, so.
So and do you live on a full-size farm, or are you on a gentleman's farm, shall we say?
Well, gentleman's farm, it's not we have, chickens and a little garden and stuff, um
Mhm.
but, yeah, it's not like a working farm, like, bringing
Not a
in
dairy or cotton
not
farm.
not a not a dairy, a cotton, or a beef farm,
Mhm.
yeah.
But that's such a great experience for your kids.
It really is. I like the fact that they can, go out in the back and shoot their BB guns and, feed the chickens and, uh, you know, build forts in the woods and things like that.
Mhm. So they're having the idyllic childhood. Is that how your childhood was?
It was. I was very similar. I grew up in Tibby, but,
Uh-huh.
you know, um, but it would very much go out back and build a fort in the woods, and, mom will
Don't
step
come
back.
in till it's dark.
Right, around dark, mom will step out on the back porch and holler, and, and
Mhm.
oh, gotta go. So, um, yeah,
So how old were you when you left in the Army? Were you in the Army, correct?
that's right. I went to Mississippi State on an Army ROTC scholarship. So I would have been 22 or 3 when I moved off, but I did go to state first. So I got my commission, or I did my training, got my degree, commissioned, and then sort of moved off. So yeah, 22, something like that.
Ugh, we're all too young when we leave, I tell you.
Yeah.
So, what is your connection to the land and the river? Because I mean, for some reason, I don't care if you're from downtown Columbus or you're from the other end of Noxubee County or you're from Clay County and Tibby, the river's got a draw to all of us, and it's always got a story. What's your story?
Well, I grew up on the Tibby Creek. So the property that I grew up on, and we rented from our landlord, but they were like our grandparents, our adopted grandparents. They were very, very close to them. But their property is basically on two sides. The boundary is the creek. So the Tibby Creek was something that I was always um, looking at, thinking about. The creek's up. Now there's water down on the bottom. We'll get our little pirogue or our little rowboat or canoe and go down there and paddle around. And the Tibby Creek empties into the Tombigbee.
Mhm,
And if you get in a canoe and go down the Tibby from where I was, it winds around. I want to say it's many miles to the
mhm,
Lock and Dam, but it's a fun little day float trip.
mhm,
And so to go, whether we went out to eat or looking at Christmas lights around Christmas, we'd come to Columbus and we'd cross the bridge, the 82 bridge over the Tombigbee. So
mhm.
it's always been in my, it just sort of took it for granted being right there. It's always when the river's up, I'll know it because it comes up in the backyard, basically.
Yeah, you always had to keep an eye to the river.
Yeah,
Always, whether it was too high, too low. If it was summertime, it was too low, and you had to watch for the snakes that came up out of the river,
exactly.
looking for something to eat, or just to harass me, or going
So
turtle hunting down there. And
that's right. Some of my greatest memories as a kid in the Mississippi bottom, right off the Tombigbee, is when it's usually this time of year. It's rained a lot between now and March, so it's usually chilly,
Mhm,
and it would rain a lot. The bottom land would flood, and we'd get in a canoe or a boat of some kind and just paddle through the woods. I always thought
mhm.
that was a lot of fun to me.
Well, there's more gators up the Tibby now than there were when we were kids.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've really seen. W did you now I'm gonna really test your redneck ability. Um, did you ever go chicken necking for turtles when you were a kid? When
Chicken, what is that? I don't
you
even know.
tie so you don't use a hook because you don't wanna hurt them because you gotta let
Right,
them
right.
go.
Right.
You take a chicken neck, you lay it out in the sun, or you just let it get stinky,
Right.
and then you tie it onto some monofilament on your fishing pole. Usually, I mean, we just use an old cane pole, but you could use a flat, a casting rod if you wanted. But you hang it out and you catch a turtle.
I've never done it like that.
And
I
then
mean,
the
I have
turtle you
tried to.
catch the
Yeah.
turtles and you slowly have to reel them in, and then you
Right.
have to then you have to get them to let go. And
Right.
so and those big old snapping turtles, I mean, we were a couple times, we pulled in some that were, bending the pole and gonna, you know, cause a problem, and we were
Right.
hoping it would drop off before it get to because those alligator snapping turtles are pretty ferocious.
They really are.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had one grab onto the pole and it just snapped the pole in two, and I'm like going,
Those are dinosaurs. Those are little
They
dinosaurs.
really are. They really are. We used to catch gar on the Tombigbee.
Right. I've never caught one, but I've seen other people and I've seen the skeleton or two along the
Yeah,
bank.
and they are prehistoric. So when you were a kid, did you ever grow up picking up fossils and fossilized arrowheads and things like that on the river.
Yes, we would. I think we had a friend. We didn't have a boat, but we had a friend who had a boat,
Hmm.
and we would go put in down on the, I guess, the west side over by the railroad bridge over there,
Hmm.
a little south of the 82 bridge. And anytime we would go down there, we would always look, for shells and rocks and anything. Uh, you know,
My mother was certain that I was going to sink my end of the house because I was always bringing home petrified wood.
oh, nice
And I didn't bring home the little, I mean, I'm bringing home,
logs.
like, so yeah, my mother swore that that side was, and I kept jars of mayonnaise jars, full of mason jars full of fossilized shark's teeth. There were a lot of
Okay.
those,
Okay. Yeah.
especially over there by the Plymouth Bluff.
Right. Okay. I've heard that.
Yeah, Plymouth, and it's still a good place. I mean, it's clay. You're gonna get filthy, so make sure you take a bucket to put your boots in afterwards, because
Right.
that stuff will never come off your boots.
Right.
That's the other thing people don't understand about the nature and the character of that land. It's the Black Belt Prairie, so it's prairie clay and prairie grass, and the grass is whipsaw. I mean, it'll cut you, and it's
Right.
serious grasslands. That's why it grows great cotton and great cattle. But the clay, if it's wet out, you pick up some, and and then the next time you pick your foot up, you've got twice as much, and it never washes off your shoes or your clothes.
Right.
It's
It's like a dye. It's like playing in dye, just about.
Yeah, it's like concrete. It's there. Well, what's next for the cultured bumpkin?
Well, I've been this year. I've started putting it. I've started. I've started it as a YouTube thing. So that way, what I'll do is I'll record it live with a guest, or just read by myself, read a story, and it'll go up on the Cultured Bumpkin on YouTube. And then I'll take the audio and put it on Apple or Spotify, wherever I have been in the past doing it. That way, it kind of, there's you hit different audiences, but sometimes, and I'm this way, if there's a person that I like to listen to, I kind of like to watch him read. Like I enjoy, like watching Jeremy Irons read the Four Quartets by
Hmm.
T.S. Eliot. That is a pleasure to watch him, not just
Really?
listen. It's I don't know. It's like you can pick up something about the attitude about what's being read. And then if it's, let's say, a comedy and they're doing voices, that can be fun to watch too,
Yeah,
as they're
yeah.
making the
Because your
faces.
face changes.
Right. But even if it's something like reading poetry, I really like to listen to that. So, different people would rather just listen, and that's fine. I kind of have it for both. But yeah, 2024 it'll be a lot more on YouTube.
Um, so what would you want someone to know who was starting out and didn't know how to do all this, and it's all so overwhelming, and what's the simplest thing, what do you think is the simplest thing that they could do to get started and to just focus on what their whatever their goal is in podcasting?
Yeah, I think that if you have a goal, like let's say even if it's monetary, like I want to be full time, this is all I do is do a podcast. I think that's totally fine. But your driving force, I think, needs to be your love of what you're doing. So you might want to be a podcaster full time. That's great, but make the podcast about something you actually like. And it could be very niche. It could be Lord of the Rings trivia. It could be anything. If you try to please everybody, you're going to please almost nobody.
Hmm.
So pick something that you like and make stuff that you would listen to, and maybe that you can't find anywhere else. Like in my case, I wanted to hear, Mark Twain, or, the Canadian version who came along a few years later, Stephen Leacock,
Hmm.
hilarious dude. But I couldn't find those. And so I thought, well, I'll do them. And so, maybe meet a need that you be the podcast that you would listen to that you can't find, basically.
So
But
find a
also,
niche and stick to it.
right, and then don't worry about spending a lot of money. Everybody has got a smartphone or something, and with technology being what it is, you probably already have all the tools you need to get started.
Well, the last time you and I spoke on your podcast, I had used telephone because for some reason we were having technical difficulties because it's Mississippi and it's our internet providers, and that worked. I mean, and I couldn't tell a difference. I thought the
Yeah,
sound quality was quite good.
yeah, it
But
was.
this time I'm on my computer and I didn't even hook up my big mic. I might regret that, but
It sounds great.
I think this Mac that I'm using has great sound quality. I haven't seen where using my mic, and I have a big expensive, blah 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 mic, spit proof and all that good stuff. It has a spit screen, and I can't tell the difference in the sound quality.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, I'm not a voiceover actor, and so
Well, most of the time, the things that you have are going to it'll be good for 99% of the stuff you do.
Mhm,
If someone is taking it, compressing the file, and like blowing it up and
mhm,
stretching it basically to put on some sort of Dolby surround sound, then that's a problem. Other than
mhm.
that, most stuff's going to be just fine because most people listen through their earbuds
Yeah.
or even the car speakers. But other than that, I mean, it's going to be okay. If for people starting out, I think a lot of people never with great ideas never get started because they don't, they sort of overthink it. I just
Uh-huh.
say do it, just go.
S
Um,
so what are you reading now in your what's on your table right now that you're reading and recording?
well, what I'm
Jane Austen?
Pride and Prejudice
Ah,
by Jane Austen. I'm almost done with that on my YouTube live, and then Jane Eyre. I've started that. What I'm reading, not just for pleasure, Killers of the Flower Moon. I've been reading that.
ooh,
Just finished it today.
excellent.
Um, yeah, and I've been reading a lot about Native American history this past year. Each year I sort of pick a sort of a you know historical era to read about. So the last bit it's been about Native American history.
You probably couldn't guess what era I'm stuck on.
I don't know, what is it?
Civil War right now,
Oh,
but
that's a
it's
good one.
mostly Reconstruction. I'm more fascinated by Reconstruction, and one of the books I'm reading right now is about John T. Wilder. I had to look at the title of the book. It's actually written by a local, semi-local. It's an academic whose family is from here, and he grew up here for a bit. But John T. Wilder was a Union officer,
Mm,
and he wanted post Reconstruction to reunite and bring in because so many of the Southern generals were actually brilliant minds, like Stephen D. Lee and his creating the agriculture and mechanical college where you went to school,
right, right.
and he was a huge advocate of industrial training in high schools so that there was another means so that not get kids to go to school longer, keep them there, but they would learn a trade by the time they left
Right.
because it was post Civil War, and he was really, not all of his ideas were good, and some of them were a bit misogynistic and a few other things, and but he was a man of his time, but it
Right.
was still cutting edge in some of the it became some of the more modern practices in farming and
Mm,
and agricultural education. But the biggest thing was the idea of having an engineering school,
right.
and that was a major piece of his gift to education. And so this John T. Wilder was fostering relationships with these men like Lee and others who were in, around the South. But specifically, what I'm looking at in this book is some of some of the ones I've been writing about and reading about who survived the Civil War and what became of them. Because it's kind of curious to me, like what's the song in White Christmas? What do you do with the old soldier?
Right. Yeah.
They
Mhm.
gotta have something to do, otherwise they're creating more rebellions and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Not
What
as
What do you do with a general when he stops being a general?
That's
Whatever it
the
was.
one. Yeah, I love that movie.
Me
Anyways,
too.
I'm a sap. Um, but yeah. I, I'm curious. What do you want your legacy to be? I'm gonna just throw that out there. When
You know,
all is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
well, I want to be remembered for somebody that was, a good family man. He was like honest, like what you if you you know if you met that guy and then you heard about him and asked other people later, like it's the same guy. He's not two-facing anybody. If you like him or not, either way, he's going to be that way when the doors are closed, in the back alley, just like out
Mhm.
on the street or going to church or whatever. It's the same guy. That's what I want to be. On the art scene, I want to be. The thing about YouTube is that long after I am dead and gone, I can still be performing Mark Twain for the next generation. I think
Makes
that's
me
so
happy.
cool. You know,
Could you throw
um,
in some Faulkner while you're at it, please?
I will
Just
have to look into that because a lot of his stuff is still not public domain,
I think his collection of short stories are.
but he does have some early stuff that
Mhm.
is pre 1924,
Yeah,
and that
that's the I think it's Spotted Horse Stories. I think is what that
okay,
collection is called.
yeah. As
I'll
long as his relatives haven't re-upped the copyright, and I want to say I've looked into that, and
I think it's only his novels that have been re-upped. I don't
okay,
think
okay.
and I
Um,
think that's because he sold the copyright to those.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay,
he was well, he was a starving Marvin.
right.
I'm getting ready to do a podcast on, his connection to Columbus.
Okay,
He
I look
stole a
forward to
girl
that.
from here.
Really,
Oh, yeah, it's a good one.
I can't wait.
You know where Franklin Square is?
Is
You know
that
where
over?
Franklin School is?
Yes,
You know, the red brick house that's right there on the corner to the side of Franklin School, if you were headed down toward Burnsville?
across the Fifth Street.
Yeah,
Okay,
that big red brick building is called Franklin Square.
okay,
It's
okay.
connected to that house.
Interesting. All right,
Yeah,
I look forward to that.
yeah, so that'll be a that'll be coming up, so because I've got a real dark episode I've gotta record, and I'm dragging my heels on that.
Nice.
And then I'm gonna go move to something interesting and not so, not so dark.
Right. Okay.
Get away from the horrors of humanity kinda thing for a day or
Right.
2.
But
Uh,
yes, and to answer to that question, I will do Faulkner. Yes,
yeah.
I'll find something that's fair game, and I'll go for it.
Well, I just think because he's Mississippi,
Right. Right. So true.
And is any Welty in any of her short stories?
I want to say she's another one right on the edge,
Uh, I
but
think
I'll
so
have to
too,
double
but
check
and
too.
and she has family that I know. I think Petrified Man is out in the public domain now.
Okay.
The other thing that is really interesting is some of, the one act I think they're one act plays that, Tennessee Williams did,
Yes.
and I think they're now because I think they're 1916, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
1916, 1918. Um, they might be interesting. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out. You do what you I mean, you do
No,
you,
that's
but
great because I do want to. I love to. I mean, because those are classics to anybody, but also with a connection.
to
Like
Mississippi.
exactly. I mean, me and Tennessee were born in the same town, so why not?
No kidding.
Yeah.
So, have you ever heard of Charles Henry Ford?
Charles Henry Ford. I don't think so. I mean, that's one of those names that sounds
Okay,
so
so
familiar.
Charles Henry Ford was a poet. His father came to Columbus. They were from like Laurel or Meridian or someplace like that.
Okay.
but his or Mendenhall. I mean, it's somewhere like not connected to Columbus. But his dad came to manage one of the hotels here. And there was a fine restaurant in the hotel. And Charles Henry Ford grew up living in the hotel, as they did, and his family had a little apartment in there. And he worked in the um, in the restaurant area. And he put together a poetry publication called the Blues Book, I think.
Interesting.
And he would collect, he would get poets, he would, people would submit work. And this is a young guy. He's like
Yeah.
21 at the time, maybe. And I could be wrong on the age, but I know he's really young because he leaves and goes to New York shortly afterwards. There's very few publications of this blue book, or the Blues Book, I think is what it's called. It had a blue cover. Ole Miss has some copies of it in their archive. Um, but oh shoot, he has some significant poets who submitted work and were published in
Really?
it. And
Okay.
and this is like 19, this is during the early part of the Depression. This is like 28, 29. This is
Okay.
really early. And but he lived here, and then he left and went to New York City, and his sister was up there. I think that's right. And they would have these salons with very famous Southern artists, Southern writers and poets.
Interesting.
And Tennessee Williams, I guess, was one of his guests. And, there were some others. I can't remember. I want to say I've even read Truman Capote, wandered through a time or two. And it was
Okay.
very avant garde. And they were considered very scandalous here,
Right.
but not there, not in New York City. It was perfect in New York City. It was maybe on Park Avenue. I'm not sure exactly. Um, but he's a fascinating character who's from Columbus. Who knew?
Interesting.
And
No,
very
I
literary.
don't know. I'm glad you said that. I'm gonna look
Yeah,
into
and
it.
one of the poets whom he published was Ezra Pound.
Really?
Yeah, and this was in a local publication. I've always thought, wouldn't it be cool to resurrect a publication here called the Blues Book, or maybe we could call it the Brown Book now. I don't know, because we got a
That
Brown
would
Dirty
be
River,
cool.
but I just thought it's fascinating because these were, even then, Pound was a very respected
Right.
poet. So these were blue bloods of literature in these publications.
That is fascinating. I
And
did
they
not
came
know
out
that.
of this hotel.
Which one was it? Where was it?
I think it was the Gilmer, but I'm not sure. I'd have to go
Okay.
back and do my research. It might have been the one that's the Alexandria, which was another fabulous hotel, the Grand Dame of the city. I
Okay.
don't know. I really don't remember. I have a friend who did a whole bunch of research on it, who was doing his thesis in undergraduate, and that was how I found out about this guy. And then I started reading about him, and I want to do a podcast on him. I just haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
But I'll let you know when I do.
I definitely. That's fascinating.
But I just think, we have such a rich literary history here.
Really do.
So,
And yeah, with things like you're doing what I'm doing, a lot of the times you can sort of make it accessible to someone that didn't go looking for it.
hopefully.
Yeah,
Anyways, I don't want to keep you forever because I know you have work to do tonight, and I need to go write this other episode up for my next podcast. But I'd far rather talk to you and find out more about what you're up to. And I hope you'll come back. And
for sure.
if you got an exciting project coming up, even if it's just for a 10-minute, stick your head in, update us on what you're doing. This is exactly what the Tom Bigby Tales is about. The tale doesn't have to be salacious, and
Right.
it doesn't have to be a murder. Although, as my father always said, don't let a good murder get in the way of a good story.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. And this has been fun. And as always, this is Jake Phillips with the Cultured Bumpkin, and I'm Shannon Evans with the Tom Bigby Tales. And we look forward to sharing with you again on our next episodes. Good night.
All right. And end